In this video, we're looking at adding and subtracting rational expressions. So let's go ahead and take a look right here, and I am going to go ahead and add the word in here, rational. So notice we have this rational expression, and it's being added to this other one on the right. So when you're doing one of these, you want to break it up into different steps, or at least that's how I've done it. And for step one, what you really want to do is you want to factor out any quadratic that you see that needs factoring. For instance, this is 4x squared plus 20x. Normally I would factor this out, but because the c value is 0, it makes it a little bit more easy to deal with. And so what I'm going to do rather is I notice that there is a common number that exists in between these two values, the 4 and the 20. And so we want to factor out that greatest common factor. And so when I say greatest common factor, just keep in mind that we're talking about the greatest number that can divide into both of these equally. And in this case, when I look at my factors of 4, for instance, and I'm just going to draw a factor tree, I have 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. And when I look at my factors of 20, and draw a number tree for that one, I have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, and 4 and 5. And so notice that the greatest value that can divide equally into both of these numbers happens to be 4. So that's my greatest common factor, or what we call GCF. So I'm going to go ahead and factor that out before I do anything else. So I'm going to divide this first term by 4 and divide the second term in that quadratic by 4. So when I rewrite this, I'm going to divide the 4 into 20, and that's going to leave me with a positive 5. And I'm going to divide the 4 into 4, and that's just going to leave me with a positive 1. Now I'm not going to write a 1 because there's a 1 in front of every x. But now I'm noticing that we have an x to the power of 2 and an x to the power of 1. So we can also divide out that x value. So I'm going to add an x to this, because we're going to take an x out of this term, which just leaves us with positive 5. And we'll take an x out of x squared, which just leaves us with x to the power of 1. Now notice that 4 that we divided, I went ahead and I brought it down and I wrote it in front. That's what this 4 is right here. But I'm also going to need to put an x after it. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my parenthesis. Now the way that you know you've done this correctly is if you take this number that's in front of the parenthesis and its variable, and you were to distribute it and multiply it back to the original, it should turn in to this original value. In other words, 4x times x gives me 4x squared. And 4x times 5 will give me 20x. So once you confirm that, you know that you've done it right. And then go ahead and start bringing down your other terms. Now my numerator was negative x. I'm still going to bring that down. I have negative x. I'm still going to bring down this plus sign. It's still positive at this point. I haven't done anything else. And I'm going to bring down this whole rational expression right here. 5 over 8x squared. So we have factored out our greatest common factor. And now we're ready to go to step 2. Step 2 is we want to cancel a variable if possible. So notice we did factor this out, and there's 2 variables that we can cancel. Alright, so do keep in mind that as you're canceling out a variable if possible, that there is a negative 1 that's in front of the x that's being multiplied to it. So I'm just going to put a dot right there showing it's being multiplied. And in this case, I have this x on the outside of the parentheses, and I have this x up here. So I'm actually going to circle them. So I am going to go ahead and cancel out that variable x. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rewrite what you see up here nice and clean down here so that we can move on to step 3. So currently I have 5 over 8x squared plus negative 1, right, because the x got canceled, over 4 times x plus 5. Now step 3 is distribute and change the sign if necessary. In other words, notice that we're adding this whole expression right here that's rational, we're adding it. But notice that we have a negative sign up here, right? And anytime you have a positive and you multiply it to a negative, I'm just going to circle both signs, the negative is going to win, right? A positive times a negative is a negative. So we're going to rewrite this now as 5 over 8x squared minus 1 over 4x plus 5. So we had that sign change. We got that done. Let's going to put a check by it. And now we're going to complete step 4, which is we need to multiply to create common denominators. Because notice, right, we have these two rational expressions, but we can't subtract them because we don't have the same denominator. So you have to have a common denominator. So what I'm going to do to make it a common denominator is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to multiply this right side by what I need in order to get the denominator to be the same as the left, and vice versa. So I'm looking at this and I'm going, well, you know what? If I need to get this 4 to become 8x squared, well, then I got to think about what do I need to multiply 4 by to get it to be 8. And so I'm just going to go and put my multiplication sign. And I'm going to say, well, I'm definitely going to have to multiply it by 2, because 2 times 4 gives me 8. And then in order to get to be 8x squared, I also need to multiply it by an x squared. So I'm going to multiply this denominator by 2x squared so that I can convert this 4 into an 8x squared. Now remember, whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top as well. So I'm also going to have to multiply the numerator by 2x squared. Now on the flip side, to get this 8x squared, right, that gets the 8x squared on both sides. But this 8x squared is missing the x plus 5. So I'm going to have to multiply this left side by x plus 5. So x plus 5. And if I multiply the bottom by that, I do have to multiply the top as well. So let's go ahead and work that out real quick. So on the top, I'm just going to write this again. We have 5 times x plus 5. And then we have 8x squared times x plus 5. So 8x squared times x plus 5. And this is minus 1 times 2x squared and then in this case I'm actually going to put the 2x squared up in front because we're going to modify that 4. So this one I'm actually going to show the math, right? I'm taking this 2x squared and I'm going to be multiplying it to the 4. I think that's the easiest thing to do here. So 4 times 2 is 8. So that's going to make this 8, and then times x squared. And then we still have the parentheses with the x plus 5. Alright, so now you can see how we have the same denominator on both sides. And I did put this 1 times 2x squared. I really don't have to have that 1 there, right? Because 1 times anything is itself. I could have just wrote 2x squared. But I'm just showing exactly how the multiplication is taking place. So now what I want to do is I want to combine these two. Since they now have the same denominator, I want to go ahead and combine the rational expression. In other words, these numerators, I want to put them together. And so let's create one single rational expression. So I'm going to write this. This is going to be 5. I'm going to kind of keep it color-coded so you can see the things that we added, times x plus 5. And then it's going to be minus, and since I'm going to distribute this 1 times 2x squared, or you could say negative 1 times 2x squared, just gives me negative 2x squared. And this is all going to be over 8x squared, x plus 5. So we've done step 4 and step 5 now, because we just combined the rational expression with a common denominator. Right? So this looks, instead of having two fractions, right, that are being subtracted with different denominators, now we have this expression on top and we have a denominator on bottom, a single denominator. So let's go ahead and go to step 6. So in step 6, we're going to distribute what can't be simplified. So anything that can't be simplified, we want to go ahead and distribute it at this point. I'm going to take this 5, I'm going to circle it, and I'm going to multiply it to this value of x. And that's going to give me 5x. I'm then going to take that 5 and I'm going to multiply it to the positive 5, which is going to give me positive 25. And then we still have this minus 2x squared. And this is all over 8x squared times x plus 5. So step 6 is done. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rewrite with the highest power as the first term. So that's step number 7. So notice, right, we have this negative 2x squared. It has the highest power. I should have it over on the left. So I'm going to rewrite this, and we have negative 2x squared plus 5x plus 25 over 8x squared times x plus 5. And this is my final answer. So I'm going to box it.